Welcome to Crossroads. The United States has drawn a line in the sand with the Chinese Communist Party over possible military action. Now, right now, it declared openly that the Chinese Communist Party's attacks on the Philippines and their ships and disputes there, that the United States will be forced to defend its ally if the Chinese Communist Party continues doing what it's doing. The warning comes after a Philippine sailor notably was seriously injured, again just recently, after a Chinese Coast Guard ship allegedly rammed their boat and again maybe attacked some of their crew. The latest incident comes amid a growing pattern of confrontations between the Philippine ships and Chinese Communist Party ships in the South China Sea. The Chinese regime, notably, they claim ownership over basically the entire region that has been rejected by many nearby countries as well as by the United States and notably as well by an international tribunal. But as the conflicts grow in intensity and with the possible CCP invasion of Taiwan hanging over the whole incident, there is a growing talk of war right now. So what's really going on? Well, let's start with what happened recently in the South China Sea. This is Reuters. They say that a Philippine Navy sailor suffered, quote, serious injury after what the country's military called on Tuesday international high-speed ramming. A Chinese boat rammed into a Philippine ship. They said it's by the Chinese Coast Guard during a resupply mission in the South China Sea. They say the Philippine military said in a statement the Chinese Coast Guard's, quote, continued aggressive behavior and unprofessional conduct towards a legitimate humanitarian mission is unacceptable. They note that China and the Philippines have accused each other of being at fault for Monday's collision near a disputed atoll in the South China Sea. It notes that Philippine officials said China disrupted a military supply mission to resupply sailors who are notably stationed in an old ship that they ran aground in that area back in 1999. That ship, by the way, it's just an old rusty ship in the middle of this, reef basically. And they're claiming territorial ownership over that region, much in the same way the Chinese Communist Party has been building artificial islands. And this Philippine ship was trying to resupply them when they were rammed and attacked by the Chinese Coast Guard. Now, this article says that China's Coast Guard disrupted this and said the Navy vessel deliberately and dangerously approached a Chinese ship in an unprofessional manner, forcing it to take control measures such as warnings and blockades, boarding inspections, and forced evictions. In other words, the CCP has set up a defensive region around that ship, and when the Philippine ships try to get past them, the CCP attacks them. And notice the Philippines said China's account was deceptive and misleading. So what's really going on? Well, look, this is actually just the latest in a recent string of incidents. There's been a lot like this. But this one is being regarded as more serious. And why is that? Well, it's because of the fact a Philippine sailor was seriously injured this time. But look, in that context, Philippine sailors were injured in some of the recent incidents as well. Back in March, for example, 4 Philippine sailors were injured and 2 of their ships were damaged in that same area. That was after a Chinese Communist Party ship tried blocking them from also, again, a resupply operation. And on this as well, it's important to note, it appears that the Chinese Communist Party may be nearing a red line, not just with the Philippines, not just with other countries in the area, but with the United States. National Security spokesperson John Kirby called the actions just recently, quote, provocative and reckless. Watch this.
This kind of behavior is provocative, it's reckless, it's unnecessary, and it could lead to misunderstandings and miscalculations that could lead to something much bigger and much more violent. It's imperative that the rightful legal maritime claims by the Philippines are respected, by the PRC and by everybody else for that matter.
Now, in addition to that, the U.S. State Department also issued an official statement, and they condemned the Chinese Communist Party's actions, and they also reaffirmed the U.S. commitment to the Philippines, including militarily. Now, this is the State Department. They say this in an official statement. They say the United States stands with its ally, the Philippines, and condemns the escalatory and irresponsible actions by the People's Republic of China, the CCP, right? To deny the Philippines from lawfully delivering humanitarian supplies to service members stationed at the BRP Sierra Madre, that's the rusty ship they have out there, on June 17th. They note that PRC vessels, again, Chinese Communist Party vessels, and their dangerous and deliberate use of water cannons, ramming, blocking maneuvers, and towing damaged Philippine vessels endanger the lives of Philippine service members, is reckless, and threatens regional peace and stability. They note as well that Beijing's actions reflect consistent disregard for the safety of Filipinos and for international law in the South China Sea. And as unanimously decided, and this is the important part, folks, as unanimously decided by an international tribunal in July 2016, the PRC, the People's Republic of China, has no lawful maritime claims to the waters around the Second Thomas Shoal, a low-tide feature clearly within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. And they note as well, and this is the big part, as provided under the 1982 Law of the Sea Convention, the decision is final and legally binding on the PRC and the Philippines. And they say the United States reaffirms that Article 4 of the 1951 United States-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty extends to armed attacks on Philippine armed forces, public vessels, or aircraft, including those of its Coast Guard, anywhere in the South China Sea. Now, the last part is what's really turning heads, because that's pretty serious. Now, what it references is Article 4 of the 1951 United States-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty. And let me show you what that actually says. This is essentially the treaty that outlines the conditions under which the United States would be forced to intervene militarily to defend its ally, the Philippines. This is the actual document. Here's Article 4, and Article 5 is also relevant. But Article 4 says, any such armed attack and all measures taken as a result thereof shall be immediately reported to the Security Council of the United Nations. Such measures shall be terminated when the Security Council has taken the measures necessary to restore and maintain international peace and security. And Article 5 goes a bit deeper into that. It says, for the purpose of Article 4, an armed attack on either the parties is deemed to include an armed attack on the metropolitan territory of either of the parties or on the island territories under its jurisdiction in the Pacific or on its armed forces, public vessels, or aircraft in the Pacific. And remember as well, right? This is all happening in the face of long-standing conflicts over the South China Sea. I'll be talking more about this, though, after we get back from a quick break.
Experts agree. One of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges with a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold. You can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Welcome back. A recent conflict in the South China Sea between the Philippine Navy and the Chinese Communist Party could actually turn into a real-world conflict involving possibly even the United States. Now, the tensions between the Philippines and China could escalate, as I mentioned, after a Philippine sailor was seriously injured after a Chinese Coast Guard ship allegedly rammed their boat on Monday. Now, the United States has stood by its ally, again the Philippines, and condemned the CCP's actions. And this is all happening over the highly contested South China Sea. Remember, even though the Chinese Communist Party claims ownership of that whole region, just about, but as the State Department notes, the Chinese Communist Party's claims were officially rejected by an international tribunal in July of 2016. In other words, the CCP has no legal claim to that region. And more importantly, if the Chinese Communist Party is harassing or attacking ships in that region, well, that's serious. Remember, this conflict took place in an area that is deemed now officially, legally, part of the Philippine territory. And so this is a Chinese Communist Party incursion, in other words, legally recognized, at least outside of China, as Philippine territory. And as the United States has a treaty with the Philippines, well, this could get pretty serious. The U.S. treaty, the defense agreement with the United States and the Philippines, notes that the United States may be forced to militarily intervene to, quote, restore and maintain international peace and security if the Chinese Communist Party is launching armed attacks against the Philippines and the region, and that includes against what they describe as public vessels. In other words, what the CCP is doing right now. And the United States warning of it is pretty dang important. The big question, though, is whether the CCP ramming the Philippine ships, spraying them with water hoses, or even capturing their sailors, whether that would fall under the definition of an armed attack. And importantly, the Philippine Navy actually posted some photographs just recently showing evidence that the Chinese Coast Guards were actually armed. And so this very likely could fall under the definition of an armed attack. Now, in terms of the U.S. actually intervening, there's a lot more to this, it's important to note. The operations the Chinese Communist Party is right now carrying out, they're referred to in the military community as the CCP's A2AD policy. That's an acronym that's often used for Anti-Access Area Denial. And it's basically the Chinese Communist Party laying claim to that whole region and then taking actions to deny access to other countries. Again, anti-access, you can't get in, area denial, the CCP starts to claim ownership over it. And that's important as well because, aside from the CCP's claims that encompass the territorial claims of other countries, including the Philippines, Japan, Malaysia, Vietnam, and others as well, well, the Chinese Communist Party also includes Taiwan, this claim they have. And that's important because if the CCP can actually carry out this A2AD strategy, anti-access area denial, then they're grabbing Taiwan along with all these other territories. Remember, one of the key strategies that's being discussed by the CCP, possibly trying to take Taiwan by force, they're talking about a military siege, like a medieval castle siege. You surround the city, you starve them out, and then you make your terms for peace. The CCP has been talking about doing this against Taiwan. In this case, that surrounding of Taiwan, that would be the A2AD strategy, anti-access area denial. And maybe establishing, for example, a quarantine. They're not attacking Taiwan, they're just making sure that they're ensuring the safety of the Taiwanese people and of China. Or using its Coast Guard, for example, to try to police who gets in and who gets out. In other words, a very similar strategy the CCP is trying to use with the Philippines right now. With that ship, the Philippines are trying to, again, resupply. If the United States were trying to resupply Taiwan, if Taiwan was trying to get goods in or out, it would look a lot like that. And so if the CCP, right, this is the big concern, if the CCP can do that with the Philippines, then what can it do with Taiwan? Could it use the exact same legal basis? And again, that's the big issue here. If the CCP can validate that strategy, if they can achieve that, then they can do it elsewhere. And notably, again, that would be the strategy very likely the CCP would try to use against Taiwan. Now, this is also very likely why the United States is regarding the recent conflict between the CCP and the Philippines as being so important, right? It's not an isolated incident for the CCP. Normally, the U.S., maybe they wouldn't make such a big deal about, a tiny spat between a Coast Guard ship and, the Philippine Navy ship. It wouldn't be that big of a deal. The bigger issue is the broader context for the region and the bigger picture of what the CCP is trying to accomplish in that region and the threats, notably, the CCP is beginning to pose to all the surrounding countries. Now, speaking of Taiwan as well, it also appears the Chinese Communist Party is, in fact, right now as we speak, putting its military in place in what looks like operations to surround Taiwan. Taiwan News said this. They say the Ministry of National Defense tracked 23 military aircraft and 7 naval vessels around Taiwan between 6 a.m. on Wednesday, June 12th, and 6 a.m. on Thursday, June 13th. of the 23 People's Liberation Army, PLA, that's the Chinese military, right? Aircraft, 19 crossed the Taiwan Strait median line and entered the country's eastern and southwestern defense identification zone. That's the Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ. In other words, they actually entered Taiwanese territory, according again to the Taiwanese MND, the Ministry of Defense. Now, in response to this, Taiwan sent aircraft and naval ships and deployed coastal-based missile systems to monitor the Chinese military activity. And they note that so far this month, Taiwan has tracked Chinese military aircraft 132 times and naval/Coast Guard vessels 109 times. And since September of 2020, China has ramped up its use of gray zone tactics by incrementally increasing the number of military aircraft and naval ships operating around Taiwan. The Chinese Communist Party has been doing this type of thing for a good while now. The important part, again, is not so much the surface picture. The bigger thing here is the broader context and the timing and why this really matters, in fact. Again, this comes right after the presidential inauguration in Taiwan, where the incoming president has declared, relative independence for the Chinese Communist Party, what the CCP is regarding as a red line on their side for war. And notably as well, as the Chinese Communist Party is starting to flare up global conflicts, they're notably blocking the peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. They're notably intervening now even between Israel and Hamas, and some pundits are saying that maybe even drawing out the war there. As I've mentioned previously on this show, the Chinese Communist Party strategy is to get the United States distracted by 4 different wars, clearing the way, of course, for the CCP to carry out its own actions, because the U.S. forces will be too divided and too bankrupt to deal with the threat of the Chinese Communist Party. Not only this, though, the CCP also did something very recently that's important to note as well. It changed its maritime rules. And under these new rules, the Chinese Communist Party is going to allow its forces to detain foreigners in the South China Sea. Now, I'll be talking more about this exclusively on EpicTV.com. That's our uncensored streaming platform of the Epic Times. So if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, X, or Rumble, this is your chance to join us at the Epic Times for honest and truthful reporting. There's a link in the description below that you can click on and get access to the rest of this episode, as well as our many other great reports, our shows, our premium articles, a lot of great stuff we have over at the Epic Times. And before we go exclusively to EpicTV.com, let me show you a trailer of my documentary, The Final War, which exposes one of the biggest threats to the United States, the Chinese Communist Party's 100-year plan to defeat America. Now, in this documentary, I expose how and why the Chinese regime is trying to infiltrate and also subvert the United States, and also what it means for America if they were to succeed. This is one of the biggest yet least understood issues that is impacting our country. And if you'd like to watch this documentary, you can find the link in the description below as well. It's called The Final War. And that said, I'll see you on Epic TV for the rest of this episode.
The greatest threat facing the United States is the CCP.
The Epic Times investigation team had studied the CCP for years, but what we uncovered was yielding evidence beyond our imagination.
With Chairman Mao, with the Prime Minister, our talks have been characterized by frankness.
The Clinton administration said, "Oh, don't worry about it. This will be a poison pill for China."
China's strategic goal is to make sure that the U.S. has 4 enemies, and one of them must be a terrorist group.
We are giving of our life's blood so that the Chinese Communist Party can survive and thrive.